Well, this is, usually you get about 20 people to an artist talk, so this is, I didn't expect this many people. And of course, I don't know what to say, but except thank you for coming here. I can do this a number of ways. I can get you to actually ask me a question, which will start the ball rolling, or I can start talking about a particular image, because each image is quite layered and there's lots of stories. So it's kind of like I'll feel my way through it. Does anyone got anyone they want to ask? Is there anything you want to ask me first? Otherwise I'll just run. And you'll have to follow me. So you're all sitting down, it's a problem. No, stay, it's okay. It's fine. So anything you want to ask? Anything that comes to mind?
What's your favourite?
Oh, look. What a question. Interesting one. It changes all the time. I particularly like that wall there, the happy wall. I like the birth one. That's one of my favourites at the moment. But there's a whole heap of the portraits behind me are pretty beautiful. The Leica portraits. They're quite gorgeous actually. So at the moment it's the photographs. But look, anything else you want to know? What do you want to know? Why are you here? What are you doing here? Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll just start, shall I?
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
I'm new to the territory, like so many people. What would you say you were saying about the territory?
In this show?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that would be the curator answering that. Look, the way...
How do you feel about the territory?
I love the Northern Territory. Absolutely love the Northern Territory. It's one of the most magical places on earth. The work that I do is just... It's my documentation of the Northern Territory. It's a lot of it... I guess most of the stuff that's happened in this room, that is in this room, has not happened in Darwin. So it's kind of documentation. And I like to document, and I like to document between the frames, because in Darwin, in the Northern Territory, it's a particular spot where we can actually see how race relations play themselves out in day-to-day lives, day-to-day activities between people. And that is more telling to me than the government policy or anything like that that comes down from the top. It's what people do to each other, what they say to each other and how they behave. So for me, I'm just really interested in giving the fuller picture of the Northern Territory rather than the lifestyle magazine kind of take. So what you see is actually what goes on here. You know, dialysis, for instance, like 98% of people on dialysis are Aboriginal. So, and there's a whole lot of reasons why that exists, but mainly it's because of racism. So that's a very layered subject, and I can approach that from lots of different ways in my work, and that wall is an example of that, you know. So it's very closely connected to my work as an illustrator and a graphic designer when I worked in health, trying to, you know, create resources that explain the Western medical model to an Aboriginal audience. So there's a crossover of that. That's why I've got organs on bodies and stuff like that, because that's part of what I did as a graphic artist and as an illustrator working with the health department. And there's a woman right there, Lee Wood, who I worked with from Donate Life. We did a whole series of resources about organ donation and intensive care. So, you know, the work crosses over from my professional work as a graphic designer into my artwork, and it's just this constant crossover. So I don't know if that answers your question. Tim,
Therese,
hello.
What about when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Like what kind of fired you up, or what did you love, or were there people that kind of, you know, we can look back, but you know, what kind of set you on that path, or were there moments that kind of were key in?
When I was a kid. No. I just always used to read about artists, and I used to read about their lives, and I used to think, wow, what a great way to live your life, to just follow this something from deep inside you that makes you make an image or make a painting, and just it's so roguish, and so it's your own thing, your own thread. And I always thought that I'd actually be a writer or make books, and and art just kind of fell into that. So I don't have nothing major happened when I was a child. My brother's in the room; he might be able to fill us in more, but I don't think so. Nothing significant. But it was this. I don't know. I've always just had this sense of being able to see through things and see the truth of things. And it's just probably a bullshit detector. I don't know. I've just had it. And so I would see the contradictions in things and go, why don't people see that just on the other side, that's actually what's really happening? So, yeah. Anyway, any other questions? Just to warm us all up? Very good. No, nothing. Fine. Oh, yes. Down the back there, the lovely woman in the frock.
My question is, what's your tip to white Aussies to help us talk about racism?
Self-reflection would be the best tip. The mirror. Because so many people have said to me that we're not racist. It's like, I just can't work that one out. So I'll give you an example. The images on the wall there, the 𝘠𝘪𝘠𝘪𝘯𝘪𝘯𝘨 portraits, which are, you're going to have to get up. Yeah. So just as an example of how racism is intrinsic in our culture, this is the first series. This series here is open cut. These are people from the 𝘠𝘪𝘠𝘪𝘯𝘪, the Gulf country, and this is their response to the MacArthur River mine, which is a massive mine down there, and it is contaminating the land. These people never ceded their lands. They never gave authority for the mine. It was fast-tracked by the Keating government, and it's been expanded and expanded. The water's being poisoned, and they're living in poverty. So this series was done, because I've known these people for a long time. So this series was done in a couple of years ago, but I'm not going to talk about that one. I'm going to talk about this one. But this is the first series, and then the second series, I said to them, let's do 3 shows. This is the first. And this is a sequence from the second series, which hasn't been published, which is called Lead in My Grandmother's Body. Now, the thing about this one is that it's about, when I first went to 𝘠𝘪𝘠𝘪𝘯𝘪 in 1989, there were a lot of old people still alive, and they just talked to me about massacres, being killed and being tied up like dogs outside the pastoralist station. Lots of stories that I was just like going, wow, this is hard to hear, but they were just talking about it because they were alive. And I've always, and I have been to some massacre sites out there, and it's a pretty disturbing thing to go to, especially with the people. But this is Jackie Green, and he suggested that I come back and I do a series about the massacres, or fast and slow violence. And we were going to go to massacre sites, but it was like 46 degrees, it was too hot, so we ended up doing a studio shoot, which is similar to this one. And the only prop we had, I took down, was a really giant bullet. And so they did what they wanted with the bullet. So there's a whole series of these, there's 28 of them, and they're magnificent portraits, if I don't say so myself. But I'm getting to the point here. But so the way this idea came about was the MacArthur River mine is poisoning, well, it's leaking lead into the water. And so the MacArthur River mine actually owned the pastoral station, which all those mineral deposits and the zinc was underneath. And they bought that out. They stopped the Aboriginal people from buying that pastoral lease back so that they knew that they were going to mine it eventually. So they'd been thinking about this for a long time. So they bought it out. They had to shoot all their cattle. This is very recent. The water was poisoned. And this woman here, Nancy, these two sisters, and I knew their mother and their mother's mother. They both passed, they're still alive, but they've since passed away. And Nancy said, well, that's not the first time they've put lead in our bodies. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, they put lead in my grandmother's body. And I remember Nora, who is her grandmother, the kids used to tease her. They used to go up behind her and they'd grab her by the backs of the arms because she had bullets, lead in her body, lead in her arms from where she'd been shot. And so I said, oh, that's a great name for a show, for the next show, which is Lead in My Grandmother's Body. So the next series is about fast and slow violence, which is the fast violence is the shooting, the massacres, the slow violence is the policy, and in their instance, the poisoning of their land. Now, it's quite the nature of racism. It's really insidious and intrinsic. And I have brought my phone because I raced home to get it because I wanted to read something to you. I need some glasses, which are just over there. Insight into how people have just pretty much shafted this mob in 𝘪𝘓𝘪𝘓. I've just got to get my glasses. Thank you. But do you remember, you know Alexander Downer? You remember him? I hope you don't know him. His grandfather, who is John Downer, sorry, I'm pacing now, because he was John Downer, and John Downer was the, he was the Attorney General and the Premier of South Australia in 1887, right? And he was responsible for giving out Martini Henry rifles. A Martini Henry rifle is a rifle that can kill an elephant, but it's great for killing a lot of people all at once because it just goes through 5 people at once. He distributed those rifles to pastoralists, police, civilians, and they were able to just walk through the Gulf country and massacre people with them. He did that, and he was a Premier of South Australia. But when the pastoralists came in as an Attorney General in his government, which is the Bray government, John Downer ignored a clause in the pastoral leases that guaranteed Aboriginal people full and free access to the whole of the leased land and natural waters, the right to hunt wildlife for food and the right to erect wurleys and etc. Basically, there was a clause to allow people to coexist with the pastoralists. He, as Attorney General, did not pay any attention to it, just gave out guns. Now, people say that was then, but they just named a suburb after this guy in Canberra. So that's how racism works. It's insidious because we just don't take responsibility and fully own our past and our part in it. It's got nothing to do with guilt or anything, it's just got to do with the truth. So does that help answer that question? Just do your homework, self-reflect, ask yourself, where are my gaps? What don't I know? How comfortably ignorant am I? Like, when I talk about Aboriginal people who are, very high renal disease and are on dialysis, if I had $1 for the amount of times people ask me, is it because of their diet? And people think that's a normal question. If your mother's got cancer and I say, is it because of her diet, is that helpful to you? Or does it indicate that I'm saying somehow or other it's her fault? So, and we don't question this, we don't question ourselves, we don't shut up and listen. Does that answer your question? Any questions? And we do need to shut up, and we need to shut up more, and then we need to keep shutting up more and more. Just stop, because we don't listen.
I wonder whether for you there's a different, given that all of your work is political, really.
Is it? It's
as a reader of your work, I see it as all as political in one way or another. But for you, is there a way that the portraiture is different from the pictures that become digitised or the graphic images. Is there a different way of messaging through those different media?
Yeah, because with the portraiture, it's them, the agents. They are the agents. It's them doing it. I'm just going click, click, click. So they're pretty powerful, and it's coming through. They have more control, and it's with not just with these portraits, with all the portraits. I love portraiture because it's just this great interaction, this great dynamic transaction between the person taking the photograph and the sitter. And if you're lucky, you'll be gifted with something glorious. These are more powerful to me, and they suit the purpose, because when Jack originally asked, this is Jack, he said, because I'm going to swear, you going to be all right with that? Because the last person I said that to said yes, and they weren't. I had a show, and there's some from the series, it's called Blacks in the Back, Cunts in the Front. Do you know that term? Yeah, you know it, so it's not really swearing, but you do know it. So I had that show, and Jack had seen it, and he's a painter. And he said, "Oh, Therese, you know that you did that show, Blacks in the Back, Cunts in the Front." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Will you do a show with me about the MacArthur River Mine? I'll do my paintings, and you can make those pictures like most of the other pictures that you see, and we can have a show together." And I said, "That's a great idea." And then we had a meeting, and he gave me all the magazines that the mine had been publishing about their relationship with Aboriginal people and their relationship to the land. It was all just propaganda and utter bullshit. But I just took all their language out, and I suggested to Jack that, what about we just write on your bodies what they're trying to do to you, like the language of the mine. He ran with that because it's a pretty kind of hard thing to ask people to do, because it's, they do a lot of painting and stuff like that. It's cultural to them. So I was kind of stepping into an area I wasn't sure of, but he ran with it. He said, "Let me try it, and I'll see how the rest feel about it." So when Sean and I went down with a list of all the words we thought they might want to write on their body, they just changed it all. They reversed it all to something that was, more powerful. And then eventually they said, "Oh, none of that English, let's just put language." So the thing about portraits is that if you make enough space and enough time and you have a project, they just evolve, and then the people, they're the powerful ones. So and these other works here, I actually build them and make them, and I'm more, I guess, they're more calculated. Mm-hmm. I'm making them for a purpose. I see them. So I prefer this because I'm more of a conduit there. Any questions? Yeah.
What do those words mean?
This one is the equivalent to "not in my backyard," but it isn't "not in my backyard," but it's something like "my country, not in my backyard." That's what she told me. And this one is just my mother. She's beautiful, Isa. It's a beautiful photo. That's one of my favourites, actually, right at this point in time. Any other questions about this body of work here?
Do you know what the third show will be called?
Yeah, we did talk about that last week. I was talking to Sean, and I think it's going to be, because these people actually live in this poverty. There's about a gazillion people to a house, and that mine is the biggest mine in the world, and they drop $1 million into the Community Benefits Trust every year. That's not a lot of money, and that just does a whole lot of other stuff. And that if you investigate where that money goes, doesn't actually go to Aboriginal people. It goes to lots of non-Aboriginal people. And in that research, I said, let's do a show called "Where Does All the Money Go?" And then we can actually list what I shouldn't be giving this away. You can't speak about this, right? It's a secret, right? It's a secret, because it has not been, I haven't spoken to this mob about it yet. So Anyway, so that is the idea, is because we did say we wanted to do 3, and I know that this woman's son did say, I think you need to photograph our homes. So that will be photographing the living conditions. So that's what we'll do, but you know, we'll wait for this one to get up and running first and see how it goes. Anything else? Oh yes, Jackie Moon.
What sort of feedback have you had from the sitters or the people in the portraits?
Well, the feedback are the images themselves, because you do one, and I process on the spot, and I show people, and then they put it on their, or I send it to their phones, and then they go back home, and then they show people, and then the next day more people come. So every photograph is the feedback, because I don't make them come. I don't say you have to come. They just turn up. These kids turned up before school. God, that was so crazy. So yeah, so the more people that saw the photographs and the more they got shared around in the community and I processed on the spot, the more that they would just turn up and say, we're here. And also, I think, because that mind cuts across 4 different groups of people, goes right in the middle, right over the rainbow serpent, people from each different group have to be in the photographs, have to be represented, and that's what Jack does. He just, you know, finds the right person to do it. They love them. They seem to love them. So, and yeah, and they get them on their phones and they swap them around and stuff like that. So the feedback is the images themselves. There you go. Anything else? Oh yes, hello.
Hi, yeah. Interesting that you sort of refer to the works as co-authored. I was wondering how that's reflected all in the titling of the work, or if it's been labelled, like if you've labelled them Therese Ritchie and Jack Green, or and furthermore, in the speaking of money, where the money is, were any of them paid for the photographs, or have any of them got rights to reproductions of the images, or rights to retract images like children?
They can retract any time they like, and I will pull them down. I'm the author. I have copyright. They don't co-own, but I don't publish unless they're completely with this body of work. I mean, Wendy's really lucky that because originally Jack and I and Sean decided that no image will be published alone. The whole series has to go together because it was done as a collaborative thing. And Wendy went to show them in this show, they had to be split. So they were consulted about that, and these were the images that were chosen. So there's a process there. They are suggested, interestingly, none of these images have sold. I think someone bought 1 or 2. And it's travelled down the East Coast, but none of the images sell because people are a bit dubious about images of Aboriginal people, especially if it's taken by a white person. They go, oh, they're a bit dubious about it. But this mob are more, they just say, yeah, sell them, because we need you to keep coming back and we need you to make a living. So that's how it's worked out.
How do you feel about like the sort of, I know you've had, yeah, exactly, quite a lot of heat about these images, like down south and things like that, because of what you've referred to. How do you see your position in that? Do you get frustrated by those questions, or?
I don't care.
Yeah.
They can just go fuck themselves. I don't care. It's just stupid. It's not real.
What's stupid?
The question, not you, and not your question. It's so not stupid. It is a good question. No, I just don't know. I do get interrogated quite a lot. Like, did you get permission? Look at them. I tied them down and wrote on them and photographed them. Of course, I got permission. It's a really dumb question. Did you get permission?
Is it dumb, do you think, in the history of art in this country?
Yeah, it's dumb because they're not looking at the people in the photographs. Do they look like those photographs were taken against their will? What are they assuming? They're assuming that I don't have a relationship. Why are they assuming that? Because they don't have a relationship and they don't know what to do. So they just become gatekeepers. Do you understand? No, but keep going because I can tell you're perplexed.
No, it's just it's a really important. Yeah, it's a really important conversation for nationally. I think it speaks. But what you're saying definitely speaks of a different kind of relationship that people in cities have maybe than up here. Like that's why it's uniquely Darwin, I guess, having the show so big. But that's interesting that you think that the questions are dumb.
Well, I probably should explain.
Sure. I'm going to wade into this as well, because this is something that I'm very aware of as well. Yeah. And I've actually written a lot about photography, so I was really interested in this. And I think these photographs are particularly powerful because I think they press a whole lot of buttons because they echo, and I talk about this in the essay that I've written too, actually, in the catalogue, so they're up for the catalogue. But I think they echo 19th century portraiture. So there's all those ethnographic photographs. So there's that whole history. And I think these talk back to that. But it's also this whole understanding of the relationship of the camera to the sitter too. And historically, all that language has been about the power of the photographer. You know, Susan Sontag, for any of you who are familiar with that, talked about, shooting with the camera and, owning people and possessing people. So it was that understanding that we had in the mid-20th century about the photographic relationship. Now that's being problematised, and I think specifically, as we move on in the 21st century, we're far more open to shifting the focus away from the artist and the photographer to actually understanding that whole photographic moment is actually far more collaborative than the writing and our understanding has ever sort of given credit to. Because, the whole language around that, the whole way we have perceived that has been about, this passive person before the camera lens and, the photographer, takes something in the process of photography. And this body of work in particular, and see the problem is with a photograph, we just see the image, we don't actually know the process and what's happened in the photographic moment and how elongated and what, that's actually a contractual relationship, but it's actually collaborative and that people are actually much more empowered than the language and the thinking about this whole relationship has been. And so, I understand all those arguments and, I've been, caught up in those arguments myself in the past, but I think there's it's shifting, there is a much greater realisation because what we're doing by maintaining those arguments is actually disempowering the people in the photographs. So if these people were, Europeans, you wouldn't be asking me the question, would you?
That was what?
So
can I just say something?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just so sorry for saying that was dumb. But the reason why, sorry Wendy, I did cut you off, but what irritates me about that question is, why doesn't anyone question MacArthur River Mine? It is really, that's not the issue. The issue is, if that mine were happening anywhere where white people were living, it wouldn't happen. We wouldn't stand for it. They are trashing that country down there. It's been allowed to go through, it's been approved. There's a clay cap on top of it. It's like Mordor down there. It just oozes poison. No one does anything about that, and yet I get interrogated about whether I got permission to take their photographs. It doesn't make sense to me. So it's not relevant to me because the mine is relevant. These people's lives are relevant. So that's why I choose my battles, basically. Because the mine has gone ahead. Why do they name a suburb after a guy that was responsible for massacring thousands of their countrymen? It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I think it's a distraction and a smokescreen, personally. But, sorry.
But I'll just finish up because I think the other big risk of that is, if we get caught up in that, is it's a continuation of disempowering the people behind the, in front of the lens too. Yeah. And so I think that's really important, is to acknowledge their agency in all of this. And we actually need to look back at some of those 19th century photographs too. Some of them are really problematic, obviously, that we know. You can't make sweeping generalisations about all of this. But some of them, there were instances where, people, either through how they, responded to the camera or, sometimes, they were willing collaborators and saw advantage in promoting themselves in certain ways, in trying to communicate to white audiences, you know, their ownership of land, their self-empowerment. I mean, one thing that we're not aware of often is in the 19th century there was a whole lot of photographs of people who were dressed up, you know, who chose to dress in, you know, settler clothing and things like that. And when they went to the photography studio, and a lot of middle-class Aboriginal people did do this in the 19th century, or a number did anyway, and it was about making claims for their equality and for their place. And I just think there's a real risk that, you know, if we get hung up about this all the time, that there's a risk of disempowering the agency of the people who are being photographed. And I'll leave it at that.
And one more thing, I will get to you, is that when this show toured, I never went with it. I was kind of pretty invisible, but Nancy and Nancy's husband Stuart, who's also in that body of work, they travelled with it, and no one even asked that question about authorship or anything like that. I was kind of invisible in the mix. They did all the talking. And people were just, you know, this show travelled the East Coast with those people talking about the mind. So it's really interesting that no one asked them about the photography or the photographs in that context either. They were pretty happy to listen to Nancy and Stuart talk about the mind. And so these were just like background images to their talk. And so that's also what it was about, was creating a space for them to be able to tell their story. Yeah? Young man in the back.
Well, I was just going to say that I think you have to be careful about disempowering the artist. And that if the artist has to ask, particularly photographers, and that if the photographer has to ask permission every time they catch out a politician doing something wrong, then you might diminish the power of the artist and their perception and their ability to catch things out.
Not talking about politicians.
No, we're not, but...
It's quite a different sort of situation. I mean, like, you know, and it's on the back of sort of art. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, that's okay. You can talk.
It's a statement about photography in general, that it can capture aspects of reality that maybe people don't want to see. And that the photographer has the ability to do that, and you have to be careful about disempowering the photographer, because that's a very valuable asset if you're going to make an artistic statement, is the ability to see through the image that people want to present.
Look, I agree. I would never feel disempowered. I just do what I want. I just can't buy into any of it. Otherwise, I'd never get anything done. But it's like, I know what feels right. I do it. If it doesn't feel right, I don't do it. If I go through a whole process, I've done something, and this has happened before. I've used Aboriginal people, you know, that work with me as models. I spend 3 months making something. I show it to them, and they say, "I've changed my mind." Okay, fine. That's life. Thus, I don't get people to sign release forms, because that only makes non-Aboriginal people feel safe. Which is why in this whole show, every Aboriginal person who's represented in this show, we found them again, and every time the work is published, I find them again, and I ask permission again, and there is a fee. They get paid a fee. If they've passed away, I find their family members. That was this whole process. Wendy Wood was part of that, finding people. She went to jail. She went to a whole lot of different places. And so it reconnected with the community. But not only that, when people pass away, you reconnect with their family. And I hadn't met some of their families. And so I was talking to their families. And so it's this whole different organism. And it's beautiful to reconnect. Rather than if I'd had release forms, none of those people would have been contacted at all. And so for me, it's that kind of fibrousness of the community that I like. And people they're just so beautiful, you know, the way they respond. So I have a particular way of working that's quite organic, and I do my own thing, and it doesn't necessarily fit. But if people are really offended by the images, if the people in them are really offended by them, I'll just take them down. I don't have an issue. I'm not precious either. So... it's a tricky area, but I'm pretty fast on my feet. I'll just move around. Should we leave the... Who am I looking at? Oh, hello. Hello.
Did you get any feedback from the mine company?
Oh, yeah, they sent their lawyers. And apparently, I did not know this, but they approached, is it NCCA? I do want to call it 24-hour art. They approached the space and asked them to take it down. Well, I didn't know that. I only found that out recently. And then they came and they took notes and everything like that. But I mean, we didn't stop anything. We just irritated them. It's good to irritate people. It's good for you. Make you uncomfortable. Anyone else? Oh, you.
I do have one, but you kind of already answered. I was going to ask you if you could talk about your experiences of censorship in terms of your taking on big miners and political figures. What are some of the tactics and things that have been deployed against you to try and silence you with these different works?
Oh, people just ignore me. That's how they silence me. They just don't pay any attention to me. It's a great trick. But I can talk about shall we? All good faith. No, we won't talk about censorship. Okay, we won't go there. We'll do it in a really loving way, because that's what it's about. It's about love, isn't it? Art is about love. There's an image over there on the wall called Criminal Stupidity. Have you seen that one? The naked cabinet members. Are there any cabinet members in the room? Oh, hello. Thanks. Now I'm really nervous. So I did this in response to the current territory government lifting the moratorium on fracking and opening up over 50% of the Northern Territory to fracking. And I initially was having dinner at my house, and I live with lawyers, and so they know lawyers, and so I was sitting next to 𝘮𝘮𝘀𝘮, who's a lawyer, and I had this idea, and I thought it was a pretty lame idea, actually. And I said, oh, I've got this really lame idea, Alistair. Do you think I should do the cabinet members? I just want to do them naked, because they've exposed themselves, and I want them to be blind because they can't see, and I want them to be just falling off a cliff. It's a bit like blind leading the blind. And if he said that's a shit idea, sorry, I wouldn't have done it. But he said that's a great idea. Just do it, and we'll print a banner 3-4 metres long, and we'll put it out. Then I'm thinking, yeah, well, go for it. Well, you know, so I did it. I made the image, and I had to be quite careful about, you know, the selection of bodies, because you don't want to sexualise people, women. You know, it's a very, very interesting area. So I thought I did quite well, and this is the report, flying into the air. Excuse me. And at this time, and at the same time that I released this, and that was the big Labor Party conference, and David Hancock got the banner printed, and we were going to take it there and have it up. And then I got a email from Alistair, and he said, "Have you seen this?" And it's a new act that's been passed by Natasha Files, who's quite a lovely woman, and the Attorney General, and it's called the Intimate Images Act. And it said in there, Therese, don't put people's heads on naked bodies, otherwise we'll put you in jail for 3 years. So it wasn't directed at me, but basically, sorry, I need some water. Thanks, mate. It's okay, I'm not going to perish. Oh. So but she'd released that in response to revenge porn. So it was about revenge porn. This is not about revenge porn. This is basically just about straight revenge. Sorry. On my knees now. So, hold on. Thank you, Margie Potter, thank you very much. So he, when I questioned I questioned the Attorney General, I said, have you made any space in your act for the artists? Well, because I do heaps heads on naked bodies, mostly politicians. There's a few of them over there. It's just fun. And so and they said, oh, we'll get back to you on that. And I never heard from them again. And then when Alistair confronted them, gosh, I've got something going on, it might be in my throat. When Alistair confronted them, or he didn't confront them, he sent them an email, said if this were ever challenged, you might look a bit odd because artists have been doing this for years. And, you know, like, she's protected under the Constitution because it's political free speech, but you have not made mention of that. If it were challenged, you wouldn't look good. And they just sent back a one-liner which said, it's too late, it's past. So, consequently, this is its first outing because the banner's at my house and may come out because now it's out there. So theoretically, you guys looking at it, you're also busted. So now, that doesn't answer the questions of censorship, but yes, because of that law and because of this image and because it's kind of borderline, it was during the curatorial process when I showed it to Wendy, I showed her this and I showed her the act and she said, oh, we're going to have that. She just took it away from me. And I thought, great, it's in. And then after some time when the dust settled and everyone realised that possibly these guys might be able to do something on a legal level, I was asked if I would remove it from the show. But clearly, I didn't say yes, because it's here. So that was an attempt, and that is, well, I thought it was an attempt at censorship, but they were just trying to work out whether they're doing the right thing, and, you know, it's an institution. So I don't really get censored any other ways. I just do what I really want. It's a great life, doing what you want, saying what you want. Yes, young man, woman. Oh, sorry. You're a man. You're a bit of both. Lucky you!
Do you regret not running the banner?
No, I don't. No, I don't regret it because the real reason why I didn't run the banner was because this woman here, who's the Minister for the Arts, had a really her child passed away, and I just thought, nah, not going to do that. So I just put it to bed. So that was the act wouldn't have stopped me, but her pain did. So that's why I didn't. That's why it's still wound up in my house. It'll come out maybe in the next climate action thing. Anyway, any other questions? Yes.
I was going to say, you're involved in the Little Pricks magazine. Right?
Well, I am the little prick.
Yeah. But it doesn't have any current printing schedule, or
it's not a magazine.
It
doesn't exist.
Are you going to? That seems to herald or like
yes.
a little bit of it.
Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. There's a lot of little pricks in there. There's a lot of little pricks in there. Sorry. No. Sorry. Say that again.
Is there any more? Are you going to be making more political artwork in the future, or are you sort of putting that to the side for now?
I don't ever. I put everything to the side and pick it up when I need it. I will always do little pricks because there's a lot of dickheads around. And I do little pricks to just get something out of my system. And yes, that is similar to the little prick vein, but it's a bit different too. The little pricks over there, the big wall of little pricks over there, they're quite different. And, you know, little pricks was just, I mean, do you know the origin of little prick? Do you remember Tony Abbott? You know Tony Abbott? Remember when he kind of casually said, oh, it's about time we close the tent embassy? No, we're over that. And then they had all those demonstrations in Canberra against what he'd said. And in one demonstration, some Aboriginal children burnt the Australian flag. Terrible thing. And I was listening to the radio, and I was in Darwin, and at the time I was making a list of all the racist things I was hearing on the radio or just in the media. I was just thinking, I just got to write all this stuff down, and I'll do something with it. And then he gets on the radio, and it's this man called Rob Knight, who's the Labor minister. I think he was the Minister for Children or Families or something. It was something. It's not much. Anyway, something, nothing. He gets on the radio and says, it should be illegal, it should be against the law to burn the flag. And if anyone, and those little pricks in Canberra, and I thought, you fuckwit, you fucker. And I just thought, right, and just got the idea, little prick. It's a good name for a magazine. And I thought every time someone does something that annoys me, I'm just going to make a lifestyle magazine cover about it. And then everyone started to think it was a whole magazine. And everyone was saying, when's it? And just exploded. But they're just covers. The magazine doesn't exist. It just comes out when I want it to.
I know, but like, if you had more support, or do you think there's space or scope in the Northern Territory for more of that type of...
Well, come on, all you little pricks in the audience, put your hands up. Answering the question here is that I got so sick of myself doing little pricks. I'm so sick of my style. I just put out to all the arts community and I said, let's, you guys do a whole lot of little pricks and I'll turn them into little pricks. So sculptors, ideas, Don White, he knows, he did a few little pricks. And so what happened was, for a while there were about 12 artists who were contributing. Look, I'd be in the supermarket and people would be going, I've got this great idea for a little prick. But you can't tell anyone it was me. They're working in the public service, they're working up at the 5th floor. You can't say it's me, but this is happening. You know, I'm in the cereal aisle, like, you know, okay, all right, I'll just take notes on the back of cornflakes. It's a great idea, you should do this, you do. It's like, so it was a community service for a while. It's just kind of, and when it was intense, Little Pricks was intense for about 18 months, and it was the last of the CLP and then the beginning of the ALP, and so there were artists who were coming in with ideas, and they're not graphic designers, so they'd give me the ideas and the images, and then I'd turn it into the Little Prick. And there's a few people I go around to, they're here now, they're from Queensland, but I got lots of ideas from Lynn and Richard, who I had many meals with. They have so much information, and I just sit and listen to them. Like, there's a little prick, there's a little prick. So it was very fecund there for a while, and I remember when we had the show up, and these CLP people came out. They came out. It was at David Hancock's gallery, and they came out to look at it. They were pollies, and they came and they stood in the middle of the room, folding their arms like this. They're going like this. They did this full circle, and then I'm just standing there where you are. By the time they came round again, they were starting to laugh. They go like that, they're just laughing, and I thought, this is great. It's fantastic. They can laugh at themselves. So, you know, there's scope for anything if the energy's there. You just have to start it. If it doesn't run, it doesn't matter. Just keep doing it. But yeah, there's a lot of little pricks to be made. Any other questions? There's a lot. Any other? Yes?
Is there anything you want to say, Therese?
Well, I've said a lot. I can say more. I can.
But is there anything you particularly want to say? That's what I'm asking.
Not that I can think of. I'm mainly inspired by what people want to know. So, I mean, I can talk about. Is there any piece that you want me to talk about?
There's a question over here.
A question? Oh, hello. Hello.
I can see in your works that one thing that's really important to you is the women's movement.
Oh, yes.
LGBTQI, and that theme comes up really strongly. And so I'm just keen to hear a little bit about your engagement and the inspiration and the works.
Okay, do you want to go to the gay war?
Sounds good.
Go to the gay war. The queer war. I talked about that I was really acknowledging the early women's feminist and peace movement of Darwin and the Northern Territory. And some of those women are here today. They flew up from Melbourne. They're dear friends. The reason why that movement is so important to me is because when I moved into a squat, it was at Funny Bay, and I opened up the cupboard to put my sheets in the linen closet. And it was just full of books and papers, and the woman that I was sharing with said, "No, don't touch that. That's the office." I said, "For what? It's a cupboard." She said, "Yeah, we're writing the constitution for the feminist constitution for the Rape Crisis Centre." that hadn't been set up in Darwin. So I went, oh, okay. And so these women would come and meet and write the constitution for what is now Ruby Guy House, Darwin Centre Against Rape. So that, in those days, there was no, there was maybe a SARC, there was a sexual assault, but it was very, anyway, so the feminist-based constitution, it was like learning to read again when I immersed myself in what these women were talking about, because it just simplified everything. We were really, really having complicated questions and making complicated decisions. Someone would say, okay, what's in the Constitution? What's the Constitution's bottom line? And they go, women and children. Okay, well then the decision is very easy then. We make the decision for them. So, but what those women taught me was how to create and love and grow a separate self within a paradigm that doesn't necessarily support you. So it was like learning to read. So I didn't know that I was acquiring these skills which would just galvanise me over time and just make me quite separate and not worrying what people thought. So that is the connection to those women and that movement, and especially Ruby Guy House, because I spent quite a lot of time, you know, one of my lovers was a worker there, and I worked there. So those women were amazing, and the women on the board and all the clients and the staff. So that was a great time. It was a very strong time. And it wasn't necessarily about, it wasn't about lesbianism or anything like that. It was just about women and children and justice. So that kind of answers that part of the question. Where are you? Who asked me that? Does that answer that part? Yep, that's that. So it's intrinsic. It's me. You know, this particular body of work, I've rarely done any work about my sexuality at all. I just never thought it, I didn't want to, I didn't feel the need to, until I was asked by Kula Roussos and Maddie Van Roden to do a piece for The Art of Pride. And I was making another list, I love lists, of just homophobic stuff that had been said, just all the homophobic things that I'd heard and things that had been sent to me. And I thought, oh, it's about time I did something personal, because usually I don't do anything personal. And I was just going to drop a big sheet, because it was a long list, big sheet of paper down. I was going to roll it out like that. And I thought, oh no, I won't do that. And then it occurred to me to write it on my back. Of course, I didn't write it on my back. Penny Rose Wiggins wrote it on my back. And so that's how this was created. And then the flip side, which is the other image on the pink wall, and it's not here now, it's on the pink wall around the corner, is me, you know, looking straight at the camera, basically. So the series is, this is all the homophobic things that have been said to me, and then I think I pulled a few delicious quotes from leaders around the world. And that was my portrait, that and the other one, and it was a diptych, and I put it in the show. And what happened after that show was that everyone just came up to me and said, ah, this happened to me, this was said to me, this has reminded me of something. And I just said, well, why don't you come round and I'll photograph it for you. So that process was a process that went for 18 months. I originally photographed women, and they would come around and we'd talk about, it's not about coming out, it was more about the defining moment for that particular person, getting me being able to take that person to that defining moment within themselves that changed them forever. It might have been someone calling someone a fucking faggot, and it had a massive impact upon them. This one woman's was like, because of her sexual preference, I think her mother said, well, that is just a waste. And so when you find these defining moments and people are quite emotionally raw and honest, except for this dude. So I just got to tell you what he said here. I just want to get puffed and write it on my forehead and go, deal with it. So That's his happy photo. That's his happy photo. His sad photo, which is like not sad, but the kind of process photo, it's got other text written around his chest, but that's his positive photo. So I love that one. So it really was such a lovely journey because everyone's so unique and they're so beautiful and they've got so many layers to them and they just settle. You have a conversation with people for 5 minutes and they've gone there. They know, I know what I want to write, I know what I want to say. And then we talk about, well, where would you like that written on your body, or do you want it written on your body? And in the instance, the diversity of it is, I'm going this way now, quick. So for instance, with this, with Daryl, he's an older man, not much older than me, but you know, when I interviewed some people, there was an era where there were no words for it because it wasn't called anything. It was just wrong. And so it went from words to how can we photograph the feeling that it made you feel. There's one guy that said, I felt like I was tarred and feathered. So I put molasses all over him, got feathers and angel wings all over him. That was a beautiful shoot too. So that's how this shoot evolved. It started with women, and I previewed that show, which was called But You're Not Ugly, which is a great title for a show because I did canvas it. I think I was at Carol Palmer's having dinner. So I've got all these things, these quotes that people have said to me, and one woman said when she came out to her best friend, like, I think I'm a lesbian, her best friend said, but you're not ugly. and immediately I said, that's a great name for a show, but can I say it now? Too soon? So, and that turned out to be the title. So it was a preview show, it was called But You're Not Ugly. And then the feedback was so great from that then I started to broaden the range, which was men, trans people. And then after it just, I mean, I could keep doing it, except it's quite exhausting. It's not exhausting in a bad way, it's just it has its time. And then we had the show called Love. And was it before that thing, that postal thing that everyone did? What was that called? What was it called? Oh, the plebiscite. Yeah, I think it was before it or after it. It was just well timed anyway. But I did not intend it to be timed or be about that. Does that answer your question? Oh, I'm so pleased. Is there anyone here that I asked to take their photograph, not in this community, and they said no? Okay. Do you regret it now?
I think I said to you last night, I'm ready.
So that is that series. Yeah, you approaching me for a reason? Okay. She might be wanting to, she looks like she wants to run and tackle me. Yes? You're going to ask me a personal question.
Not at all. I'm going to ask about some of the things that are a little bit different. So I'm thinking about the landscape photographs here, and I'm thinking about the photographs over there that have got, you know, artistic references in them.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering about.
Oh, they. Yeah.
So
okay.
Just want to know if you want to talk to them.
I'll talk to them and then I'll talk to them.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I get to swear again now.
Okay.
So those series over there are from blacks in the back, cunts in the front. And Colin. So I had been working on a series of works and it's about NPEX, it's about the fly-in, fly-out workers and the change of the culture in Darwin, which I was watching happening. It was more like a mutation. I thought it was more like a mutation than a change, because people call it progress, but I just think we've just mutated. And so I started to get a fetish for high visibility. This image was inspired by, this is ridiculous, by the financial advisor I went to see at the ANZ Bank. He was about 12. And he'd only been in the Territory for that long. And all he kept asking me was, where can I go and get barramundi? I don't fucking know. What about my money? Where's my money? Anyway, so it's true, he did inspire this I had a lot of fun making this series because I wanted it to be surreal. I wanted it to be twisty and mutaty because it's my response to NPEX and the surge, the gas boom. So I started doing portraits of people in high vis with large fish around their necks because the fish are symbolic. Sorry, Don, I know you love to fish. You're not like him. The fish are symbolic of just like, well, you know, it's that whole thing of just they come up and they want to take something. It's like a trophy, it's oversized. You know all those photographs of people holding up giant fish? What is that about? I mean, I ask you, come on, what is that about? No. That gentleman over there said small penises. I never thought that at all. I don't think about that. But, busted. No, so anyway, look, this is about art, right? This is art. So I would go around and I'd take photographs. Now the skies in Darwin in the wet season are extraordinary. So I would photograph skies and bits of landscape, and then I'd go home and build collages. So it's a complete collage. And I would get, in this series of body of work, I think there's a giant one up there. There he is here. I just got all these really famous, they're famous because they're famous, not because I know them or I'm going to cite their names because I don't know their names. These are famous portraits from the Renaissance, because my whole thing was the new elite, the new royalty, the new culture in Darwin, the place where the money was going and the place that everything was focused on were the fly-in, fly-outs. They were determining culture in the town. They were determining what kind of entertainment. They were ruling the show, and they had no idea. They had just no idea about the place, and so I wanted to make them look like they were just passing through, basically, but, you know, trampling the place in the process. So that I created, there's so many more, and that's a big body of work. And this is a response to the dredging of the harbour, which is, you know, one of the most beautiful harbours in the world. Well, let's just dredge it. You know, dolphin crash, no more, like, you know, and I remember going over the harbour in a boat and those things where they measure the depth and the way, and it's so varied and so amazing, and to think that they dredged it, and the colour of the harbour, what was it, for a year, it was just like red-brown from the dredging, and so many animals were killed in that process. So this is a reaction to that. I think I did want to call this greedy white cunts, but I just called it greedy instead. And here, well, this is an ode to Wright Price. Does anyone here know Wright Price? Yes. Wright Price was the supermarket, and they were just about to pull that sign down. I photographed it, and this is more Darwin skies, and this is just some made-up landscape. It's pretty just made up. It's surreal. And this is another giant fish, if you haven't worked that out. And these are fracking tubes. And these are, this is from a Wendy garden. Where's Wendy? Can you tell me where this is from, please?
Oh, that's the Robert O'Hara, that's the burial of Burke. So there's a 19th century painting of Robert O'Hara and the others burying.
Yeah, so I don't recall that, but in the image they're holding a flag. I wasn't there. I didn't get their permission to take that photograph.
We've actually got, in the video, we actually collaged in the original reproduction of that. There's a little scene that goes from that image to that original reproduction.
Yeah, that's true. If you can watch, if you can bear watching video, which it's meant to be very good, but I find it too confronting. So yeah, so I've included that just because, I don't know why, it works. Sometimes when I collage, I just plonk it in and it goes, that works and it'll do. Sometimes it's really intentional, like that's very calculated and very constructed, as is that, but that one just all happened together, and I really like that piece. So, and those two far ones there with all that's Australia Day at the Darwin showground. It's great, isn't it? It's really attractive, don't you think? Can you believe that? Who does that? Come on, own up. Who does it? You warm one on your cheek? Little flag? Okay. Anyway, so that, and so I just stuck the high-vis bloke in. Sorry, just doing a little sidestep. I just find this stuff fascinating. But on the same day as this day, now we're jumping bodies of work here, because I just take photographs a lot. On Australia Day, I went out to the showground and was just so gobsmacked by the beauty of our culture. So I photographed that. And then I went back to where I live, which is, do you remember this used to be called the Cage Bar? So it was called the Cage Bar because it was a cage and people were inside it drinking and, you know, it was a rough pub, but it has gentrified since and it's still rough. But there was a big drinking session happening and a huge brawl, it was Australia Day brawl happened outside that pub and I thought, great, I'm just going to go down and take photographs. So I rushed down and I'm taking photographs thinking, yeah, I'm fine. And then this dude, he turns around and he sees me, he's off his face. He turns around and he sees me, he does that and then he just charges me and I just went, oh, I'm fucked. I'm fucked like that. And I thought, gee, I'm glad I didn't bring out my Leica because I brought out my other camera. And he got to about there and then this cop car just pulled right in, boom, and the doors flew open and they just grabbed him. But he was just coming for me. So, and so I shot him and this other shot behind it is Another Day. So I put him there because this is part of a series called 𝘠𝘩𝘓 that I did with the lovely Todd Williams. And because we were just, when did we do that? 2013. And I've been wanting to do a body of work with Todd for a while because, you know, I just love working with Todd. I just love the way he works and the way he creates images. It's really wacky. And it was Todd's wife, Gail, who said, why don't you have a show and call it 𝘠𝘠𝘓? Because, just a little bit of statistics here, if the Northern Territory were a country, we'd be the second biggest drinking country in the world. And Aboriginal people make up 1/3 of the population of the Northern Territory, and only 18% of them drink hazardously. So someone else has got to be doing all the drinking to get those stats up, and it's not them. But who gets blamed? Who gets criminalised? What gets criminalised? It's called racism. Aboriginal people. You know, it became criminal for them to drink. They turned drinking into criminal activity, mandatory rehabilitation. So I was just so furious by the duplicity of it and the hypocrisy of it. We just decided, well, let's focus on what happens when white people drink. And so we did a whole series, and this is 2 from them. There's a whole lot. It was a hilarious show. And at the opening, we had gammon police officers, which I don't think you're allowed to do, but we did. And there was just, the cop shop was just next door. Once again, another 24-hour opening. And they just went round and they went through everybody's purses and took the money out and poured out their drinks and just monstered them, which is what happens to Aboriginal people, you know, in public spaces. They're constantly monstered, as you can see by here. Like, I was there, this dude was doing nothing. He was fine. He was just doing nothing. He was black. And they move people around. This is obviously taken a while ago because they've still got their little khaki numbers on. Now they have to wear black. And so that shot here is basically this is about long grass and short grass. This guy's just casually mowing his lawn, doing what he wants. Because we all love to do what we want, except for this guy, because he can't do what he wants at all. And they were just moving him on, and in fact they were arresting him. They were putting him back of the van for whatever reason. So I did document a lot of that. Same with here. They moved them from like about 300 metres away, put them in the back of the paddy wagon, drove them away and then let them out. It was just fuck with them. Just fuck with their lives and their heads and their stuff. and then pop them out and go, oh yes, well, you're right, mate. And this woman's just jogging by. And in this particular image, that's actually near Chapman Road. I put a colonial kind of landscape behind because I like to collapse time in these kind of images, because I think this form of violence is a slow violence. You know, we are just crushing the life of these people just by our racism. And then this one, this is the new era. Now we've got security guards everywhere. Have you noticed them? They're everywhere. We don't have to have police moving Aboriginal people on. We can have these boneheads moving them on. I mean, I was there, he didn't do anything. They didn't want him to go past a certain point. Look at all these ones going through. So this is the new era, and you go to shopping centres like Nightcliff Shopping Centre now, they have security guards there. Aboriginal people don't go in. They just don't do it. You know, so this is how it's getting worse and worse and worse. Any questions? Am I talking too much? No. Got any questions? Does that explain, Sam? Oh, the landscapes? Do you want me to go to the landscapes? Well, this is my secret desire, is to give up people and take up. No, it's not. So we've done this before. So this is 2 holidays that I've been on: New Zealand, and the other 2 are 𝘠𝘬𝘬𝘳𝘠𝘪 driving me everywhere, and I go, oh, there's that light, I have to take the photograph. So 𝘠𝘬𝘬𝘳𝘠𝘪 stopping and me photographing country. I just love chasing the light. I just love the light. So that's just what it's about. So it's a beautiful thing, taking a photograph of light. So that's all that's what they're about. They're moody, but that's just how they are. That's what it looked like, isn't it, Margie? Mm-hmm. That's right, yeah. So they're pretty straightforward, those images, and that's what I like about them in regards to that. I'm being told to wind it up. Has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask? Oh, hello.
Yeah. I'm interested in how, like, obviously these, the work that you're doing being political, they're not sort of really selling work. So I'm really, how do you manage?
How do I manage financially?
Yeah.
Well, I do live with Marcus and Susan. They charge me very cheap rent, and I'm a graphic designer. I get jobs, but the economy has not grown for 5 years, so it's been pretty hard. Not very well. I don't manage very well, but I'm okay. You don't really need a lot.
No, I'm sort of discovering that.
You don't really need a lot, and so I it's up and down. I don't get many sales. I hardly get any sales, but people support the work. They support me and they support the work, but they don't. You don't want it hanging on your wall, do you? I mean, I wouldn't want it. I mean, I don't have it hanging on my walls. No, it's because I don't. But I don't. I just take it day by day. So I don't have super or anything like that. I don't have property. Oh God, I'm fucked.
You should see financial advice.
I should see if well, that's what happened. What a dickhead. What are you doing?
Did you charge him for the advice about the fish?
No, he didn't actually, because it was a free consult, but he wanted me to come back. No. Anything else?
You need to catch $1 million fish.
Yeah, well, I think that's what he was after. I was like, get out of it. Any questions, anyone else? Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Yours. Is that good?
Yeah, that was great.
I got away with swearing quite a lot.
You did get away with swearing quite a lot.
You can bleep it out.
Well,
Okay, thank you everybody. Enjoy.